Have you ever checked your phone for 30 seconds and somehow you felt worse? Not informed, not clear, just tighter, more alert, more braced? Like your nervous system just got handed a clipboard and told, "Congratulations, you're in charge now." That is what I mean by panic mode. Not a clinical diagnosis, not a label. And I'm talking about that everyday state where everything feels urgent. Your attention starts scanning for threat, and even small inputs feel louder than they really should. Now, let me show you what I mean. For 38 minutes, an entire state lived inside of one notification. A message hit phones across Hawaii. Ballistic missile threat inbound. Seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. People searched for shelter. People called loved ones. People tried to figure out what was real. And then 38 minutes later, the correction came. False alarm. Now, most of the noise in your life is not that dramatic, thank God. But let me ask you a question. If one false alarm can throw an entire state into confusion for 38 minutes, what do dozens of small alarms do to your mind every single day? I'm talking about the headline, the notification, the angry email, the market update, the group text, the breaking news alert that breaks nothing except your peace. Here's the idea. The noise is just not informing you, it is training you. By the end of the episode, I want to give you one filter that can help you tell the difference between what needs action, what needs attention, and what needs to be left alone before it starts driving the bus with no license. The filter is simple. Siren, signal, static. Before we go further, I am not talking as someone who has mastered this perfectly. We are learning together. So comment below and tell us what kind of noise has been hardest for you to turn down lately. News, work, family, social media, ministry, money, or perhaps just something else. Your answer may just help someone else name what they are carrying. Welcome to I Am Built for Pressure. Here's the filter early. When noise hits your life, ask, is this a siren, a signal, or static? A siren means something is truly urgent and requires action now. Like a child is in danger. A real deadline is here. A crisis needs a response. Now, a signal means that information matters, but it does not require panic. A trend you need to watch. Feedback you need to process. A problem you need to schedule. A conversation you need to prepare for. Static is emotionally loud, but not actually useful. Rumor, outrage, speculation, repeated alerts about the same thing. Someone else's anxiety trying to become your assignment. That is the tool. Siren, signal, static. Because one reason people feel overwhelmed is that they treat static like a siren. And if you treat every sound like a siren, eventually your whole life becomes a fire drill. And nobody grows spiritually, emotionally, or professionally by living permanently in a fire drill. Somebody needs to write that one down and tape it to the coffee maker. Now, let's define noise. Noise is any input that raises your emotional temperature without giving you a clear next step. That could be a headline, a notification, a conversation, a meeting, a rumor, a comment section, a text that says we need to talk with no explanation. That phrase should come with a tiny warning label and maybe a pastoral care team. Noise is not always false. That is important. Sometimes the information is real. Sometimes the issue matters. Sometimes there is something you need to know. But even true information can be delivered in a way that trains panic instead of clarity. There is a difference between being informed and being flooded. Informed means I know what matters and I know what my next wise step is. Flooded means I know a lot, but I cannot tell what matters anymore. Some of you guys are living in that state, and I'm there too with you. They are not uninformed. They are overinformed and under-clarified. They have consumed more input than they have processed. They have absorbed more urgency than they have acted on. They have allowed too many voices to walk into the control room of their life and start pressing buttons. And the problem is not just that the world is noisy. The problem is that repeated noise becomes training. If every day begins with alerts, outrage, crisis, speculation, and emotional escalation, your body starts learning. Life is an emergency. And once your body believes life is an emergency, clarity has to fight uphill. Now, let's go back to Hawaii, because the most important part of that story is not simply that a mistake happened. The deeper lesson is what happens in the gap between the alarm and the clarity. And the gap is where panic loves to live. On January 13th, 2018, Hawaii's emergency alert system sent a false ballistic missile warning. The message told people to seek immediate shelter and said, "This is not a drill." According to the FCC report, the false alert produced 38 minutes of confusion, fear, and uncertainty. Some people tried to confirm whether the alert was real, while others faced the expectation that a missile strike could only be minutes away. Think about it. The first message was a siren. At least it looked like one. It had the authority of a siren. It had the tone of a siren. It had the urgency of a siren. But it was false, and the correction took time. That gap matters, because panic loves the gap. Panic loves the space between what you heard and what you know. Panic loves unclear information. Panic loves unanswered questions. Panic loves maybe. Panic loves what if. Panic loves a group text with no adult supervision. That is why noisy environments are so exhausting. Not every noise is a true emergency, but many noises arrive dressed like one. And when enough things arrive dressed like an emergency, your nervous system starts checking IDs at the door and eventually says, "Forget it, everybody in." That is how people get trained into panic mode. Not all at once, not because they are weak, not because they are dramatic, but because their inner life has been living inside too many alarms. Now, the noise trains panic in at least 3 ways. First, noise trains urgency. Everything feels immediate. Answer now. React now. Post now. Decide now. Worry now. Have an opinion now. Explain yourself now. Fix it now. And urgency is tricky because it can sound responsible, but urgency is not always wisdom. Sometimes urgency is just anxiety with a calendar invite. In episode 6, we said calm leaders do not answer the room at the speed the pressure entered them. That matters here too, because noise often tries to set the tempo before wisdom has entered the room. Second, noise trains suspicion. After enough noise, you start assuming there is a threat behind everything. A short email becomes disrespect. A delayed reply becomes rejection. A headline becomes destiny. A rumor becomes reality. Someone says, "Can we talk?" And suddenly your brain has opened a courtroom, hired attorneys, and selected dramatic lighting. Nothing has happened yet, but the noise has trained you to assume danger. That does not make you discerning. It makes you exhausted. Now, third, noise trains powerlessness. When you take in too much information you cannot act on, you start feeling responsible and helpless at the same time. That combination is brutal. Responsible enough to take care, helpless enough to feel stuck. You hear about global conflict, economic instability, AI disruption, church tension, family pressure, political chaos, health concerns, work uncertainty, and your heart says, "This matters." But your calendar says you have a dentist appointment at 2:30. So now you are carrying the emotional weight of the whole world while trying to remember if you lost. That is not strategy. That is a nervous system hostage situation. And here is the important point. Caring deeply does not mean carrying everything constantly. So what do? We do not become ignorant. We do not become cold. We do not move into a cabin, throw your phone into the lake, and communicate only through suspicious poetic smoke signals. We learn discernment. And when noise hits, ask yourself, is this a siren, signal, or static? A siren requires action. If it truly is urgent, respond. Do the next right thing. Make the call, send the update, protect the person, address the issue. Move. But even with sirens, clarity matters. A siren does not mean panic. A siren means focused action. Firefighters move with urgency, but they do not run into the building screaming, "Everything is terrible and I have no plan." At least we hope not. A siren deserves action, not chaos. And a signal requires attention. A signal matters, but it does not get to hijack your whole day. Maybe the economy is changing. Maybe AI is affecting your industry. Maybe your team has a pattern you need to address. Maybe someone gave you feedback that deserves thought. Maybe your family rhythm is showing strain. Do not ignore the signal. Schedule it. Process it. Think about it. Talk with wise people. Turn it into a plan. Now, a signal says, pay attention. It does not always say, panic immediately and ruin dinner. And again, dinner has suffered enough in this series. Static requires distance. Static is the input that produces emotional heat with no useful assignment. The comment thread, the speculative headline, the vague rumor, and the repeated outrage loop, the person who turns every conversation into a weather system, the algorithm's emotional buffet. And listen, the algorithm is not your pastor, it is not your mentor, and it is not your spiritual director. It does not wake up in the morning and say, how can I form this person into wisdom and peace? No, it says, would you like 11 more things that made you mad yesterday? That is not discipleship, and that is not discipline. That is a raccoon in a vending machine. Static does not need to be argued with. Static needs distance. Turn off the alert. Mute the thread. Leave the comment section. Stop checking the thing that becomes checking your peace, because some noise does not need a response. It needs a boundary. So here's a practical move for this week. Build a signal system. Not a perfect system, just a simple one. First, choose your trusted inputs. Do not let every voice have equal access to you. Choose a few sources, voices, leaders, friends, or advisors that help you become clearer, not just more agitated. You cannot have a clear mind if every anxious voice has a key to your front door. Second, choose your input windows. Do not let noise drip into your day all day long. If every hour gets interrupted by every update, your mind never gets to finish a thought. Check the news at a set time. Check messages at a set time. Review important inputs at a set time. And yes, emergencies can interrupt, but if everything interrupts, nothing is actually leading. Third, choose your no noise zones. Your morning time alone, drinking coffee outside, enjoying the beautiful sunrise, a family dinner, deep work, sleep, taking a day off, exercise, the first 10 minutes after waking up, the last 30 minutes before bed. Protect some spaces where the world does not get to shout at you. You are not being irresponsible. You are rebuilding the place from which responsibility can actually be carried. For those of us who lead from faith, this matters deeply. Not every voice deserves pulpit access to your peace. The question is not, can I hear everything? The question is, what is forming me? Because whatever gets repeated gets rehearsed, and whatever gets rehearsed gets stronger. So rehearse clarity, rehearse peace, rehearse wisdom, rehearse prayer, rehearse attention, rehearse the ability to say, that is static, it does not get to lead me. Now, at the beginning, we talked about Hawaii. A false alarm created 38 minutes of fear and uncertainty. The lesson is not that all alarms are bad. The lesson is that alarms need discernment. The noise trains people into panic by making too many things feel like sirens. And when everything sounds like a siren, people stop asking, what is wise? They start asking, how do I make this feeling stop? That is when pressure starts making decisions. So here's the sentence I want you to carry. The goal is not silence. The goal is discernment. You do not need to know nothing. You need to know what deserves you. You do not need to stop caring. You need to stop letting every input claim the same emotional authority. You do not need to escape the world. You need to stop letting the world static become your inner soundtrack. A siren deserves action. A signal deserves attention. Static deserves distance. So this week, ask yourself, is this a siren? Is this a signal? Or is this static? That question alone can turn the volume down enough for wisdom to speak. If this is the kind of conversation that helps you lead and live with more clarity, subscribe and stay with me through this first season. And in the comments, write the word you need most right now. Siren, signal, or static. If the noise has been making you reactive, watch Don't React, how calm leaders think clearly under pressure next. Because once you lower the noise, the next step is learning how to respond without letting pressure make the decision for you.